Update number 4 for the Iran war.
Come on. Get shot! Oh, fuck!
Oh shit, that one's going down, it's going down. Oh, that shit just...
Oh my God.
וואי. אלוהים! מה קרה? כל הנמל התפוצץ! תסגרי את החלון, אני לא...
شوف لا والله حربية طيارة حربية شوف
Our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen, and sadly there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is.
There is a lot to cover. I wanted to give some space between this video and my last video so we could have more visibility of the current playing field. So, where are we now? Well, the US started this war on behalf of Israel, murdered the supreme leader of Iran and several other high-ranking officials, and struck all over Iran with over 1,200 missiles. Trump threatened to kill anyone in Iran who vowed to continue resisting the US. His hope was that Iran would capitulate quickly, but this did not happen. Iran has not capitulated, nor do they seem interested in doing so. Iran responded to the attacks very quickly with strikes all across the region. They pummeled US bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Radars, air defense batteries, air bases, barracks, and naval bases were all struck. Iran went even further and began hitting airports and hotels in the Gulf. Now, many people are surprised why Iran would do this. This is probably because they are not aware that the Gulf houses US bases that facilitate their presence in the region and, by extension, the attacks on Iran. So from Iran's perspective, they are attacking these Gulf nations for their complicity in facilitating the aggression against them. By striking the bases in the Gulf, Iran hopes to weaken America's position in the region, primarily their logistics, which is an important opening move for what could be a prolonged war that requires munitions and maintenance for American aircraft, naval ships, and launchers. The attacks also apply pressure on the Gulf to apply pressure on Trump so he can back off from the war that he started. But why are they hitting hotels? Well, we can only speculate. Let's take a look at Dubai and the UAE. Keep in mind that there is an economic element to this war. Iran needs to make this war costly for everyone involved. Tourism is a very large part of the UAE's economy. Hotel establishments across the UAE welcomed over 23 million million guests in 2025, bringing in over $70 billion. So this could be one reason why Iran is hitting these hotels, to apply economic pressure. However, I think there's a stronger reason. You see, the US emptied their bases in the region of their American soldiers before the war kicked off because they knew these bases would be targeted. These soldiers are still in the region, however. So where are they? Well, they are most likely in the hotels getting hit by Iran. Additionally, there is a very good chance that CIA, Mossad, and Gulf intelligence officers are also housed somewhere in these hotels. In fact, Israeli media claimed that Iran struck a CIA base in Dubai. So it would seem that these drone attacks on hotels aren't random or misguided, and that there is a method to the madness. So in general, the Iranian strategy is the same, a costly asymmetric war of attrition where they bleed everyone involved. But tactically, we now have evidence of how they plan to do this. The very heavy attacks on the Gulf is one part of this strategy. In the last few rounds of warfare, the wars were limited to Iran and Israel, with Jordan and Iraq in between. So for example, when the airspace closed down, it mostly closed down in a horizontal line from Iran to Israel. But with attacks on the entire Gulf, including on some of their airports, Iran has officially made this a regional war, leading to the closure of the entire region's airspace. As cowardly as these Zionists are, they are accustomed to war and have bomb shelters to withstand missile strikes. But the Gulf does not. So the Gulf Arabs no longer have the privilege of waiting for the war to end from their luxurious hotels and restaurants. They are now involved and will be inconvenienced by this war. This is just one form of pressure that Iran will continue to apply on the region. The other tactic, obviously, is to exhaust air defenses. Iran is estimated to have tens of thousands of short, medium, and long-range missiles, both old and new, with tens of thousands of drones. And they reportedly have the ability to produce hundreds more each month in their underground factories. So Iran is prepared to have a long war of attrition, but their chances of success greatly increase if they can exhaust the very low supplies of air defense missiles that Israel, the US, and the Gulf have in stock. So just in the first 2 days, they have launched over 450 missiles in all directions, but mostly at US bases and Israel, to destroy radars, launchers, and exhaust interceptors. Iran's missiles have actually been very impressive in both their accuracy and maneuverability. Just take a look at this video here. 11, even 12 missiles are wasted trying to intercept an incoming Iranian missile, and they still couldn't do it. And in this video here, you see a US PAC-2 air defense system failing to intercept a single Iranian missile 3 separate times. Each PAC-2 missile costs $4 million. This is costly. The West is far wealthier than Iran, of course, but this isn't an issue of money. It's an issue of production. Despite the Ukraine war and the last 2 years of warfare, the US has not increased production of their air defense missiles at all. So if this war continues longer than a week, the US, Israel, and the Gulf will be critically low on interceptors and may have no choice but to watch missiles and drones rain down on their facilities completely unabated. Now, Iran has also taken a beating by both Israeli and American missiles. So this is not a one-sided affair by any stretch of the imagination. To get a clear picture of what's happening, I'm going to read for you a tweet by war analyst Patricia Marins where she explains what she thinks is currently going on. Day 2. Israel decimates Iranian installations. Iran retaliates. Israel and the US have been relentlessly bombing Iranian territory on the second day of the war, launching strikes primarily from Iraqi and Saudi airspace. Approximately 1,000 targets have been hit in Iran, including air bases and bunkers. The Iranian Navy was also targeted, with 3 to 4 warships sunk. However, it's worth noting that only one of these vessels was modern. The others date back to the 1960s. The hunt for Iranian missile launchers continues, with Israel striking several mobile launchers and anti-aircraft units daily. This is an extremely arduous task, as estimates from the military balance suggest Iran may possess up to 500 mobile launchers and hundreds of Sharad systems. On this second day, Iran decided to strike 5 bases and airports being used by US-Israel forces all at once. The Saudi Prince Sultan Air Base was hit by multiple ballistic missiles, with several reports of smoke rising. Similarly, Iraq's Ain al-Assad base was targeted, but nothing compares to the intensity of the attacks on Erbil Air Base in northern Iraq and Ben Gurion Airport, which came under several ballistic missiles overnight. And do you know what the biggest problem is? Iranian missiles are slipping through Israeli and American air defenses like a hot knife through butter. Yesterday and today, I've shown videos where launchers fire up to 9 or more interceptors in attempts to down a single Iranian missile, often with little success. Iran's retaliation against US bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE continued on the second day, mainly using drones. As I mentioned yesterday, Iran has proven that the war is only just beginning. It targeted Israeli cities with modern missiles that disperse submunitions during re-entry, significantly expanding the affected areas. These missiles had never been used before in combat, showing that Iran is now deploying its most advanced systems, which are also far more resilient to interceptors. At the current rate, interceptors will run out soon, and panic will grip both Israeli and American leadership. Both sides are failing in their primary objective, significantly reducing Iran's launch capacity, which remains high with roughly 450 missiles and 850 drones ready in just 2 days. If this pace holds, defensive munitions won't last more than 4 to 5 days. Based on what we've observed, Iran launches 200 to 220 missiles per day, while the coalition expends no fewer than 700 to 1,000 interceptors or even more, with very limited success. In the best case scenario, this gives about 5 days of defensive ammo left. In the realistic worst case scenario, I've estimated from the interceptions I've seen, it's only 4 days. This puts enormous pressure on the leaders of both countries to seek a ceasefire. Now, what she's saying here is actually consistent with an Israeli media report about Trump asking Iran for a ceasefire through an intermediary just today, which Iran, of course, rejected. I believe that if Iran refuses a ceasefire, both Israel and the US will push for Gulf countries to enter the war, aiming to bolster defenses and deter further Iranian actions. The entry of these countries would be paramount for the US and Israel due to their air support and especially their naval power. These Gulf nations possess approximately 400 vessels, including frigates, corvettes, and patrol boats. But until that happens, the war boils down to the same question. What runs out first? Iran's missile launch capability or the coalition's interceptors? So in summary, there are a lot of specific tactics and information for us to pay attention to, but in general, the war goals are the same. What the war comes down to is this: what will run out first? US-Israeli interceptors or Iran's ability to launch missiles? That's it. That's the war. After Iran rejected Trump's offer for a ceasefire, Trump then announced that this would be a month-long operation. This is actually what I predicted in my first update video when I shared my opinion that this war would likely be a longer one. In my opinion, I think this is going to be a fight to the end. I don't think Iran can agree to another ceasefire without resolving this issue, and the only way to resolve it at this point is to fight. This war is now much more than a temporary skirmish. This is a historical event that will determine the future of the region, potentially the world. And this goes back over 2 years to Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas in Gaza, who predicted a great war for the future of humanity. Sinwar planned the October 7th attack that triggered all of these events, and he did it because he felt the Arabs had completely abandoned the Palestinian cause and normalized with Israel.
لا يراها رأي العين سيغير شكل الكرة الأرضية لأنها حرب إقليمية دينية ستحرق الأخضر واليابس. مع العالم فرصة أنه يطلع ويتحرك للحيلولة دون وقوع هذه المعركة الكبرى. الآن على كل فصائلنا المقاومة وأجنحتنا العسكرية وهم الإخوة ممثليها أن تكون على أهبة الاستعداد والجهوزية. على كل فصائل مقاومتنا في قطاع غزة أن تكون على أهبة الاستعداد وتكون على الندهة. المعركة لم تنتهي بانتهاء شهر رمضان. المعركة ستبدأ حقيقة بانتهاء شهر رمضان.
So far, Sinwar has been proven correct. We see the entire region cooperating to defend Israel's territory from Iranian missiles. And if they get involved further, as Patricia Marin suggests, it will be even more obvious that the Arabs are vassal client states, not just of US imperialism, but of Zionism. And this war has now become a regional one, as Sinwar predicted. And it is also clearly a war for the future of the region. Israel seeks to be the hegemon. It is Greater Israel and Pax Judea paranoia that they seek. This war will make or break that vision. And it seems that the Ayatollah understood this as well. We now know that he was killed because he himself refused to take shelter in any bunker.
Yes, actually, Ayatollah Khamenei was in his office every day, and several times the security asked him to move from his office to another city, and he refused. He said, if you could move 90 million Iranians to another city, I will move after 90 million. Actually, obviously, they cannot do that. They asked him, we will provide you some basement to be safe for you. Said, if you could provide and build basement for all Iranian, yes, I'm ready also to be after 90 million. Actually, they couldn't do that for all Iranians. So he remained in his office, in his house, and in the morning, the aircraft of Zionist regime and America attacked his office. He, with his wife and his daughter-in-law and some of his nephew, passed away and martyred. Actually, they want to kill every official, Iranian officials, but they have to know that their blood will not stop the way, and their blood will bring a lot of other people, and they will shout out against Zionists, and they will remove them.
In his last speech, he emphasized the decline of the US empire and how Iranian weapons could further its decline. There was also an emotional part to his speech about self-sacrifice.
جان ناقابلی دارم، جسم ناقصی دارم، اندک آبرویی هم دارم که این رو هم خود شما به ما دادید. همه اینها رو من کف دست گرفتم، در راه این انقلاب و در راه اسلام فدا خواهم کرد. اینها هم نثار شما باشه. سید ما، مولای ما، دعا کن برای ما. صاحب ما تویی، صاحب این کشور.
Zionist, and they will remove them.
In his last speech, he emphasized the decline of the US empire and how Iranian weapons could further its decline. There was also an emotional part to his speech about self-sacrifice.
جان ناقابلی دارم، جسم ناقصی دارم، اندک آبرویی هم دارم که این رو هم خود شما به ما دادید. همه اینها رو من کف دست گرفتم، در راه این انقلاب و در راه اسلام فدا خواهم کرد. اینها هم نثار شما باشه. سید ما، مولای ما، دعا کن برای ما. صاحب ما تویی، صاحب این کشور تویی، صاحب این انقلاب تویی. پشتیبان ما شما هستید. ما این راه رو ادامه خواهیم داد، با قدرت هم ادامه خواهیم داد. در این راه ما رو با دعای خود، با حمایت خود، با توجه خود پشتیبانی بفرما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. اذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله افواجا فسبح بحمد ربك.
It seems clear that he saw more value in his own death than he did in his life. As Scott Ritter put it, the Ayatollah wanted to be sacrificed, and the US seems to have fallen for that trap.
We don't have a clear intelligence picture. Now people say, well, Scott, we were good enough to get Ali Khamenei on the first day. We weren't that good, guys. He was sitting at home, sitting at home, sitting at home. He wanted to be killed. We fell into his trap. Ali Khamenei, a man who probably had cancer, a man who has openly said that his body is failing him, died a martyr's death. And in doing so, he saved the Islamic Republic of Iran, because the people now have rallied around that cause like they've never done before. We thought we were carrying out a decapitation strike, the first 6 missiles, but we guaranteed we lost the war. And the Iranians guaranteed we lost the war too, because all we did is turn Ali Khamenei into a martyr.
Now, Scott Ritter is hit or miss. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. This time, however, I think he's on the money. This war can no longer be undone, and it's unfortunately a necessary one for the region to free itself of Zionism and imperialism. This war is going to dictate whether that takes place. A new world order is being built. What stands in the way is Russia's war with Ukraine, China's potential recapture of Taiwan, and very crucially, this war with Iran. The outcomes of these conflicts will dictate the future of the world, but that's just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know down below. I pay special attention to comments coming from my channel members who pay every month to support my work, which of course I am deeply grateful for. So if you want to become a channel member and support my work, click the pinned comment down below. However, I do also try to read as many comments as I can from other people in the early hours after a video's release. So don't be shy to let me know what you think down below.
Oh, that shit just. What? You are? Holy shit! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Hi everybody, today's Sunday, March 1st, 2026. Hi everybody, today's Sunday, March 1st, 2026, and our dear friend, our brother Scott Ritter is here with us.
Carried out a decapitation strike, guaranteed that the United States and Israel will lose this war. They didn't hunt down Ali Khamenei as he was trying to hide from American missiles. You don't get to make the case that this was a coward running away, trying to hide from a fate that was going to be dealt to the Iranian people. You don't have to be the greatest intelligence analyst in the world to find Ali Khamenei at home, publicly available information, meeting openly with other people. We made this man a martyr. And when I say this man, understand that this is the second most revered figure in Shia Islam, the Twelver ideology. The only person that has a higher stature, at least in the eyes of some, would be Sistani, the Grand Ayatollah out of Najaf, Iraq. But Ali Khamenei, again, a lot of people don't understand when we say Vilayat-e Faqih. I may be mispronouncing that. I hope I said it right. I've practiced it. But the guardianship of the supreme jurist, it's a religious approach that was embraced widely by Ayatollah Khomeini when he created the Islamic Republic. But the notion that yes, Iran is a constitutional republic, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's also an Islamic republic, and therefore under the Twelver faith. And I don't want to get too much into theology because A, I might get it wrong because I'm not a theologist, and I don't want, and B, we're going down the wrong path. But, the Shia faith is premised on the notion that when Hussein died in the Battle of Karbala, that was the last legitimate imam, and now they are waiting for the return of the Mahdi. And it was a Jesus-like figure. The imam in hiding will come back, and all this. It's their faith, and you have to respect that. But the point is, so in the interim,
Scott, and that they say that he's gonna come with Jesus, and they're gonna come together.
Yes, I know that. I'm not mocking anything. It please me. When I laugh, I'm not laughing at the religion. I'm laughing at my own fundamental ignorance. I've studied this stuff. I really have. I've read everything I can read, but I am so tired right now that when we deal with reality, and especially when we deal with historical reality, there are nuances. I learned a long time ago, even when speaking about the Shia faith, the interpretation of what Hussein did at the Battle of Karbala. Was it an act of martyrdom? Was it an act of selfishness? It's been interpreted over the years by different people. So then what you have to do is dig even deeper into it to find out which interpretation adheres more closely to reality, as opposed to, people trying to spin data to, so you have to dig even deeper than that. And so I have spent a large part of my life trying to solve these problems, these and similar problems. And so when I laugh, it's just a reflection of the fact that I'm exhausted and I'm trying to dig deep into an already addled brain and pull data up, and my brain's just sitting there going, meh, meh, meh. You're not going to access this. So I laugh out of frustration to myself because, as I said, I didn't want to enter into this dialogue because I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared to go this deep. Normally, I would have done the research in awoken brain cells. But the point is, in Iran, when we deal with Vilayat Faqih, we've created the Shia of Iran have created a position of the guardianship of the supreme jurisprudence, Islamic jurisprudence, and this is a man who is the ultimate expression of the Shia faithful until the Mahdi returns. That's what they believe. You can mock it, do whatever. I will never mock it. I'm just saying that's what they believe, and you have to understand that. And many people do believe it. The Twelver, adherence to the Twelver, faction or whatever. I use wrong words here because I'm not trying to denigrate, but those because there's Ismailism, there's Niners, there's different ways to embrace the Shia faith, and Twelver is the most popular, and it's dominant in Iran, it's dominant in Iraq, it's dominant in Azerbaijan. I think it's about a 50% adherence rate in Bahrain and elsewhere throughout. So when we speak of Ali Khamenei as the supreme jurisprudent, we're speaking of a man who is revered like the Pope amongst Catholics. This is not a human being. This is a symbol of God. This is part of their faith. And we assassinated him. We killed him. Now, if I were to put on my CIA advisor hat, I wouldn't work for them, but I've worked with them in the past. I know how they think. I understand how they approach problems. And if I were called upon to advise them, and I believed in what they were trying to do, I would have said the best way to collapse the Iranian regime is to keep Ali Khamenei alive in a bunker hiding from you. And so now you attack his courage. You attack his status as a man. You say what kind of man hides while the people of Iran pay the price for his sins? And you start denigrating him, attacking him, putting out AI-generated imagery of him doing vile things in vile ways. And the goal here is to collapse confidence within Iran to this man, and therefore to Vilayat Faqih, to the Islamic Republic. What you don't do is take a man who has openly said, I am frail, my body is failing, and my highest aspiration is to go out a martyr and give him the martyrdom he seeks. Ali Khamenei knew he was going to die when he held that meeting. Whether it was that day or the next day, he knew he was going to die. He willingly sacrificed himself because he knew what the outcome would be. He knew that by letting Israel and the United States murder him, that the Iranian people would rally around their faith like they have not rallied around their faith in a long time. Donald Trump, when announcing this operation, spoke of how the United States was going to create the conditions for the people of Iran to rise up and take matters into their own hands, but it would be up to the people of Iran. And so in order to do that, you have to collapse confidence in the government and have the people come out and say, we are ready to replace this government. Today in the cities of Iran, there are crowds of people out there filling the city squares, and they are shouting Khamenei's name, but they're not saying death to Khamenei. They're not saying down with Khamenei. They're saying long live the martyr Khamenei. God praise Khamenei. He is now a martyr, elevated to near sainthood status, and the Iranian people are rallying around him, and they're rallying around the cause of the Islamic Republic. We lost the war the moment we dropped those bombs or those missiles on Ali Khamenei's home. And that's what's happening right now. Everything else is just noise because this is a regime change operation. And it was predicated on the notion that
Assalamu alaikum. অনেকক্ষণ ধরে আসলে কথা শুনলাম স্পট রিডারের। সো বেশ কিছু দিকে আসলে দেখা গেছে যে মানুষ বলা বলি করতেছে এত ইজিলি আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনিকে শহীদ করলো কিভাবে, মানে এটা অনেকের ভিতরে একটা প্রশ্ন ছিল এন্ড ভ্যালিডও ছিল প্রশ্ন, বাট সামহাউ যে যারা আসলে অ্যানালিস্ট এবং যারা তোমার ইরানের এই মাযহাবটাকে নিয়ে অনেক বেশি পড়ালেখা করে তারা অনেক কিছু আসলে স্পেকুলেশন লাগাইছে। এর ভিতরে একটা এখন অনেকে এগ্রি করা শুরু করছে যে আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি এই যুদ্ধের ঠিক আগ মুহূর্ত পর্যন্ত কিন্তু তার পপুলারিটি অলমোস্ট নান ছিল, তুমি বলতে পারো 20-25% তার পপুলারিটি ছিল 100%-এ, কারণ তাদের যে পথ্য শিয়া মাযহাবের ফলোয়ার আছে তারা কিন্তু দিনকে দিন কমতেছিল এবং তাদের এই আয়াতুল্লাহদের যে আলেমদের একটা শাসন ছিল এটা কিন্তু অনেকে মনে করতেছিল যে এমনি ফল করবে, মানে ইসরায়েল ও আমেরিকার মধ্যকার কোনো অ্যাটাকার আসলে প্রয়োজন ছিল না, মানে তাদের যে অবস্থা তাদের ইকোনমিক যে অবস্থা ছিল, দেন গেছে বছর জুন মাসে যে যুদ্ধ হইল, তো একের পর এক সিটব্যাক কিন্তু আসলে আসতেছিল। সো ইরানের যে ইউনিটি অথবা এই আলেমদের যে রাষ্ট্র গঠন এর কিন্তু ক্রিটিক ইন্টায়ার ইরানই ছিল, মানে 3/2 ভাগ বা আরো বেশি, প্রায় 2.5 ভাগ কিন্তু ক্রিটিক ছিল আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনির শাসনের বিরুদ্ধে। সো যদি তুমি ইউনিটির কথা বলো তাহলে একমাত্র একটা জিনিস আসলে তাদেরকে ইউনিটির দিকে নিয়ে আসতে পারতো, তা হইল যে আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনির আমেরিকার দ্বারা মৃত্যু এবং ইসরায়েলের দ্বারা মৃত্যু, যা মানুষ অটোমেটিক্যালি তার নেতার জন্য কিন্তু ফিল করবে যে যত যাই হোক আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি হইতে পারে খারাপ, আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি হইতে পারে আমাদেরকে যা প্রমিস করছিল, যা দেওয়া দরকার ছিল একটা শাসক হিসেবে তা দিতে পারেনি, আমাদেরকে অপ্রেস করছে, আমাদেরকে মারছে, আমাদেরকে বহু হত্যাযোগ্য করছে, বহু ভয়াবহ ক্রাইম করছে, বাট স্টিল তুমি আমার নেতাকে মারতে পারো না। এই যে একটা চিন্তা ডেভেলপ করতে পারছে আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি, এবং তার বয়স প্রায় 84 বছর বয়স এবং মোস্ট প্রবাবলি সে ক্যান্সার রোগে আক্রান্ত ছিল যেটা অনেকে দাবি করতেছে। সে অটোমেটিক্যালি কিন্তু 2 বছর পর আসলে মারা যাইত। সো এবং তার যে তেহরানে যে প্লেসে থাকে ওইখান থেকে আসলে নাসরা সিকিউরিটি ফোর্স আসলে বলছে যে আপনার উপর অ্যাটাক হইতে পারে। পরে ইরান, তোমার রাশিয়া, চায়নাও কিন্তু কার্গো প্লেন পাঠানোর কথা বলছে যে আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনিকে আমরা রেস্কিউ করবো, বাট সে না বলে দিচ্ছে, যদিও এখন অনেকে রোমিটিসেস করতেছে অতিরিক্ত। বাট দ্য পয়েন্ট ইজ যে আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি রিয়েলাইজ করতে পারছে যে আমার পপুলারিটি আমার রাষ্ট্রের ভিতরে সবচেয়ে লো, অল টাইম লো, মানে এর থেকে আসলে লো আমার মনে হয় না কোনো সময় ছিল, এবং মোস্ট প্রবাবলি তোমার এমনি ফল করতো এই রাষ্ট্র যদি তোমার আমেরিকা অ্যাটাক নাও করতো বা যদি ফল নাও করতো, তাদের অবস্থা অনেক অনেক কঠিন কিন্তু হয়ে গেছিল। তাদের ইকোনমিক সিচুয়েশন তুমি যদি দেখো অলমোস্ট তোমার পভার্টি লাইনের অনেক নিচে চলে গেছিল এবং বহু সমস্যা ছিল তার ইকোনমিক। বাট সামহাউ এই অ্যাটাক দ্বারা তাদের ভিতরে আবার একটা ইউনিটি আসছে, তাদের এই রাষ্ট্রের প্রতি ভালোবাসা, এবং পুরো গ্লোবালি তুমি দেখো তাদের এই মিসাইল অ্যাটাক গুলো পুরো আরবে যে পরিমাণে ক্রিটিসাইজ হওয়ার কথা ছিল, আরব রাষ্ট্রগুলো আসলে যেভাবে আসলে পার্টিসিপেট করতেছিল যে বাকি মুসলিম দেশগুলো আমাদেরকে সাহায্য করবে, আমাদেরকে অ্যাটলিস্ট মুখে বলা পর্যন্ত তোমার ওটা ওইভাবে কিন্তু আসলে আসেনি। এর কারণ কি? কারণ মানুষের সেন্টিমেন্ট ইসরায়েলের বিরুদ্ধে অনেক বেশি। তুমি হইতে পারে ইরানকে আসলে কেউ ভালোবাসে না, হইতেই পারে, এটা অস্বাভাবিক কিছু না, বাট ইসরায়েলকে তার থেকে লক্ষ গুণ বেশি হেট করে, আমেরিকাকে তার থেকে লক্ষ গুণ বেশি হেট করে। সো তুমি যখন একটা মুসলিম দেশের ভিতরে ঢুকে একটা মুসলিম শাসককে তুমি এইভাবে হত্যা করবে, তার পুরো পরিবারকে আসলে অ্যাসাসিনেট করছে এবং শহীদ করছে, সো তুমি অটোমেটিক্যালি যে নৌকা অলরেডি ডুবতেছিল ইরানি রাষ্ট্রের, ওই নৌকা তুমি আসলে এখন যেন তুমি নিজে তৈরি করার সুযোগ ছিল। লক্ষ লক্ষ মানুষ যারা কালকে পর্যন্ত, মানে যুদ্ধ শুরুর আগ পর্যন্ত, শুক্রবার পর্যন্ত তাদের বিরুদ্ধে ছিল, কালকে তেহরানে সবাই তার জন্য র্যালি করছে। সো এখানে আমেরিকা ভুল তো করছে, বাট তোমার যে স্যাক্রিফাইসটা আসলে আয়াতুল্লাহ দেওয়ার চেষ্টা করছে, এবং আল্লাহ করুক যে সে সফল হয়েছে, যে মানুষের ভিতরে জাজবা, মানুষের ভিতরে রাষ্ট্রের প্রতি ভালোবাসা তোমার তৈরি করতে সক্ষম হয়েছে, ওই জিনিসটা কিন্তু ট্রুমেন্ডাস, এবং তুমি ওটাকে ডিনাইট করতে পারবে না। ঠিক আছে, এই জিনিসটা অনেক এখন রিয়েলাইজ করতেছে যে আসলে আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি তেহরানে কি করতেছিল, যখন সে জানে যে তার উপরে হামলা হবে 110% কনফার্ম ছিল, স্টিল সে তার প্লেস থেকে কিন্তু সরে নেই। সো এই পুরো ইস্যুটা কিন্তু অনেকে এখন রিয়েলাইজ করতেছে যে এই স্যাক্রিফাইসটা আসলে তার রাষ্ট্রের ইউনিটি বা তার যে স্টেট বা রাষ্ট্রের যে কাঠামো মানুষের টেক ওভার করার কথা আসলে আমেরিকা বলতেছে, ওই জিনিসটা এখন মোস্ট প্রবাবলি আসলে মানুষ করবে না। কারণ মানুষের তাদের পক্ষে যদি আগে 10 জনের থেকে 8 জন থাকতো, এখন তাদের পক্ষে 10 জনের থেকে 6 জন, তাদের পক্ষে 4 জন যদি বিপক্ষ থাকে, তারা অ্যাটলিস্ট এই মুহূর্তে তো আসলে রাষ্ট্র টেক ওভার করা ট্রাই করবে না। সো যেই স্যাক্রিফাইসটা আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনি আসলে দিচ্ছে তার রাষ্ট্রের জন্য, ওভারঅল ইসলামের জন্য, উম্মাহর জন্য, কারণ যেই সেন্টিমেন্ট তুমি শিয়াদের ভিতরে দেখতেছো, সেম সেন্টিমেন্ট কালকে পাকিস্তানে কিন্তু আমেরিকার কনসুলেটের উপরে অ্যাটাক হয়েছে, এম্বাসির উপরে অ্যাটাক হয়েছে। সো তুমি ওখানে দেখো, যদিও ওখানে কিছু ইস্যু হয়েছে এবং প্রায় 40 জনের মতো তোমার গুলি করে মারছে পাকিস্তানের আর্মি এবং কনসুলেটের ভিতরে যেসব আমেরিকান সেনা ছিল, যদিও ওটা এম্বাসি কনসুলেটে কিন্তু তোমার সেনাবাহিনী নর্মালি অপারেট করার কথা না, বাট ছিল। যাই হোক, পয়েন্ট হলো সুন্নিরা পর্যন্ত কিন্তু এখন তাদের রাষ্ট্রের বিরুদ্ধে যাওয়া শুরু করতে পারে। ওই জিনিসটাও কিন্তু সে মানে তার লাইফের স্যাক্রিফাইসটা এখন অনেক বড় আকার আকৃতির হয়ে যেতে পারে যদি এই মুহূর্তে ওটাকে আসলে দাবানো না যায়। দেন প্রত্যেকটা মুসলিম রাষ্ট্রের একবার শাসকদের বিরুদ্ধে এইভাবে আসলে ক্যাম্পেইন হতো। কালকে দেখলাম বাহরাইনে সম্ভবত কিছু মানুষ বের হয়েছে, যদিও এটা পরে জানতে পারলাম যে এতটা গুরুতর না, এত বড় আকার ধারণ করেনি। বাট তুমি রিয়েলাইজ করতেছো যে এই জিনিসটা আসলে যদি একের পর এক রাষ্ট্রের উপরে এইভাবে আসলে বোম্বিং করতে থাকে এবং তাদের যে পরিমাণে নেতা মারছে, তাদের যে সেন্টিমেন্ট আসলে তৈরি করতে পারতেছে জায়নিস্টের বিরুদ্ধে, ওই জিনিসটা কিন্তু অসাধারণ। সো ওই জিনিসগুলো আসলে চিন্তা করে তুমি ধরতে পারো যে আয়াতুল্লাহ খামেনির যে স্যাক্রিফাইস, ওইটা লং টার্ম উম্মাহর জন্য, লং টার্ম উম্মাহ প্রজেক্টের জন্য কিন্তু অনেক বেটার হয়েছে। কিছুটা সময়ের জন্য আনস্টেবিলিটি ক্রিয়েট হবে, এতে কোনো সন্দেহ নাই, বাট সৌদিরা অনেক ব্যাকে আছে, কাতার, বাহরাইনে অলমোস্ট তারা ছোটখাটো কিছু ক্যাম্পেইনও করছে মানুষরা, যদিও এটা আসলে মোস্ট প্রবাবলি এটা বড় আকার ধারণ করার আগেই দমন করা হবে। সো ইরাকের অবস্থা অলরেডি আনস্টেবল এবং আরো বেশি হবে। সিরিয়ার অবস্থা কতটুকু কি হইতে পারে দেখাতে পারে। জর্ডান, মোস্ট ইম্পর্টেন্টলি জর্ডানে যে পরিমাণে তাদের রাষ্ট্র ইসরায়েলের পক্ষ হয়ে আসলে মিসাইল ইন্টারসেপ্ট করছে, যে মিসাইল জর্ডানে পড়ার কথাও না। তো জর্ডান খুব ভয়াবহ একটা প্লেসে আছে এবং মোস্ট প্রবাবলি সিরিয়াতে যে সরকার, এটা কিন্তু অনেকদিন ধরে আসলে চেষ্টা করতেছে একটু স্টেবিলিটি আসলে তৈরি করা, যাতে করে রাষ্ট্র আস্তে আস্তে করে তোমার ভালোর দিকে যায়। বাট গেছে মাসে নভেম্বর ডিসেম্বর এই 2 মাসে কিন্তু বেশ কিছু দিকে তোমার কুর্দিদের সাথে একটা বড় ধরনের কিন্তু কনফ্রন্টেশন হয়েছে। সো ওই কনফ্রন্টেশনে যদি এভাবে আসলে চলে, সো এবং যেহেতু ওই জায়গায় আমি বললাম যে ইনস্টেবিলিটি নাই, সো জর্ডানের সাথে কিন্তু যে কোনো সময় যে কোনো কিছু আসলে হইতে পারে। সো ওই জিনিসগুলো আসলে মাথায় রাখা দরকার এবং মানুষদের বেশি বেশি করে আসলে তাদের রাষ্ট্রের দিকে আসলে এই দাবি করা দরকার যে অ্যাটলিস্ট ইরানিদেরকে যদি সাহায্য না করতে পারো, আমেরিকানদের হয়ে আসলে কথা বলে না। কালকে আমাদের ফরেন মিনিস্টার আসলে যা বলছে, যা স্টেটমেন্ট দিচ্ছে, এগুলো খুবই দেখতেও খারাপ লাগতেছিল এবং প্রয়োজন ছিল না। তুমি ওইভাবে আসলে স্টেটমেন্ট না দিলেও কোনো যায় আসে না। আমরা বিগ প্লেয়ার না, আমরা অযথা মুসলিম সেন্টিমেন্টের বিরুদ্ধে যে আসলে কোনো কিছু করার মানেও হয় না। আমরা অনেক ছোট প্লেয়ার, আমরা ডিপ্লোম্যাটিক ভাষায় দুনো পাশে কিন্তু দুনো পাশে আমরা থাকতে পারতাম। বাট সামহাও আমাদের রাষ্ট্রের যারা বড় আছে তারা বারবার সিদ্ধান্ত কেন নেয় যে এইভাবে এমন সিদ্ধান্ত নিব যা মুসলিম সেন্টিমেন্টের বিরুদ্ধে যায়, উম্মাহ সেন্টিমেন্টের বিরুদ্ধে যায়, যা প্রয়োজন নেই। আমরা কিন্তু কোনো বড় প্লেয়ার না, আমরা ইরানের পক্ষে আসলে লড়াই করতে পারবো ইসরায়েলে, না আমরা আমেরিকা বা মিডল ইস্টের পক্ষে ইরানের সাথে লড়াই করতে পারবো। আমরা লিটারালি nowhere in the game. But যখন তুমি আমি আমাদের ফরেন মিনিস্টার যখন ইরানকে আসলে ক্রিটিসাইজ করে মিডল ইস্ট অ্যাটাক করার জন্য, প্রয়োজন নেই। তুমি ডিপ্লোম্যাটিক ভাষায় দুনো পক্ষকে আসলে খুশি রাখতে পারো, তো ওই জিনিস আসলে করার প্রয়োজন ছিল না, যা আসলে আমাদের ফরেন মিনিস্টার, এবং তুমি নতুন আসছো, 2-3 দিন হয়েছে, সো এই মুহূর্তে অ্যাটলিস্ট এরকম বড় ব্লান্ডার করার প্রয়োজন নেই। জাস্ট ডিপ্লোম্যাটিক ভাষায় দুনো পক্ষকে ক্রিটিসাইজ করো, দুনো পক্ষের জন্য শান্তির বার্তা, যেটা সবসময় শেখ হাসিনার আমলে হয়ে আসতেছিল। সামহাও আমাদের এখন যে ফরেন মিনিস্টার আছে তার সাথে কিছু এই জন্য তোমার হঠাৎ রাষ্ট্র সিদ্ধান্ত কেন নিল যে ইরানের বিপক্ষে আমরা বা ইরানকে আসলে ক্রিটিসাইজ করব। এনিওয়ে আমরা আবারও ব্যাক টু দ্য ভিডিওতে যাই।
We would decapitate the regime physically. But we don't understand the true nature of this regime. It is an Islamic republic. As we speak, constitutionally, the Islamic Republic, this constitutional republic, this product of one of the most meaningful democratic exercises or expressions in the Middle East. Iran is the most legitimate democracy in the Middle East, the most legitimate democracy in the Middle East. And they have a government that adheres to the Constitution. Ali Khamenei is dead.
Skip this video if the starving kids in Gaza don't bother you. Right now, thousands of kids in Gaza.
Constitutionally, the president, the head of the judiciary, and a Islamic jurist selected by the Assembly of Experts create an emergency council, and that council has been created and is governing today. We haven't decapitated anything. You can't decapitate a system that believes in itself. If this was truly about one man, Ali Khamenei, then it'd be over. But this is an Islamic republic that is based upon faith, and is based upon a constitution, and the constitution is functioning, and they have a replacement to fill the position of supreme jurisprudence until the Assembly of Experts selects another man. This is the way the system works. The Iranian system is working. So we've achieved nothing. We have decapitated nothing. We are focused on personalities while we disrespect the reality that the Islamic Republic is a system of faith, a system of laws founded in a constitution. Maybe we, the American people who live in what is ostensibly supposed to be a constitutional republic, we have lost faith with our constitution. We no longer function as a republic. Therefore, we're not in a position to recognize when a people who haven't lost faith with who they are and what they are adhere to their constitutional norms, values, and standards. And that's what the people of Iran are doing today. The streets are not filling with people seeking to be empowered by the vile perfidy of the United States and Israel. They're filled with people who are rallying around the cause of Iran, around the cause of the Islamic Republic, around their faith, and they will never be defeated.
Yeah. Scott, the war is happening, the Iranian response started with the Arab states, with the Persian Gulf and Arab states, and then expanded to Israel as well. It seems that the attacks are intensifying in the direction of Israel as time goes by. The major, because they wanted somehow to neutralize Arab states, then go after Israel. They started with that. And here is what General Petraeus said on CNN, is his assessment of that.
On my bingo card when this started. I think the Gulf wanted to stay out of it. Yeah. They're being drawn in, so that's something to watch over the coming days.
A big mistake, I think, actually, Dana, because again, the Gulf states that they have been attacking the Gulf states. The Gulf states wanted to stay out of it, as Brett said. So they did not even allow us to use their bases in a number of cases. Now they're into it. They've been attacked, and not just our bases, but civilian areas as well. And so they're going to take place now with the defensive measures. As Brett mentioned, we have aircraft in the sky now. I'm sure they're being integrated by the Combined Air Operations Center. And if that continues, they're going to probably take further measures.
I want to talk about
what do the Arab states in the Persian Gulf have to go against Iran? Because they were begging to Iranian officials, let us hit some locations in the desert, and because we have to show something. Iran said, no, if you do that, you're going to be destroyed. This is the communication between the Arab states and Iran. And what is your understanding of that?
Well, first of all, David Petraeus is one of the dumbest men that walked the face of the earth. He should never have gotten 4 stars, let alone be the director of the CIA. He's a disgrace. And he just shows his ignorance of things. The Gulf Arab states were hit not because they're innocent, but because they're guilty. They provided basing for the United States of America that helped set up this conflict. And even though the United States may have temporarily withdrawn troops, there's still infrastructure in place that's plugged into an overall system. For instance, we may not have aircraft at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, but we do have a $1.1 billion, or I should say we had a $1.1 billion advanced radar system that was designed to detect Iranian missiles as they launch and feed that detection data into the ballistic missile defense system, protecting Israel and other air bases. So it is a party to the conflict. And the Qatari government didn't insist on it being shut down, dismantled, removed. It operated. The same thing holds with Kuwait. The same thing holds with Bahrain. The same thing holds with the United Arab Emirates. All these places that have been attacked are places that are home to American military installations that have an ongoing role. It's not an active role. And there are other things too. According to some reports, a CIA base of operations in Dubai has been struck because the CIA is actively, again, if people understand the region, I know you do, Dubai is a center of smuggling into and out of Iran. And the CIA is very active in using these smuggling routes to get resources in and out of Iran. So we have a major base there that talks to these Dow operators, that does this, coordinates with the United Arab Emirates government on anti-Iranian operations. The other thing is the Iranians know full well that while these nations were saying you can't use our airspace, you can't use this, behind their backs they were telling the United States, if you're going to attack Iran, kill Iran, finish Iran, get rid of the Iranian regime. And so they were punished. They were punished up front. And it's a signal that we can punish you. Now, the funny thing, again, Petraeus just shows his absolute ignorance. They have aircraft in the air, and they will integrate with the Combined Operations Center and be flown. David, do you think that the Saudi Air Force is capable of launching a penetration mission into Iran and effectively striking targets? What targets would you give the Saudi Air Force? Because I can guarantee you this, those targets won't be hit, they won't be destroyed, the Saudi Air Force cannot perform. Just ask the Houthi, just ask the Yemeni. Saudi's been bombing the crap out of them since 2014 and achieved nothing because they're not very good. We gave them advanced aircraft, they're not very good. And now we're going to allow these Saudis to interfere with our air campaign, be disruptive of our air campaign? I think not. We've been down this road before. I just want to remind your audience, I've been there, done that, and I have the T-shirt, meaning that during the Gulf War, when Iraqi missiles started striking Gulf Arab states, these states were insistent on being allowed to participate in punitive attacks against Iraq for their national pride. And when we let them, they just screwed it up. I mean, we're talking about getting shot down because they're not very good. Running away in fear, that's another one. They would approach the air defense and turn around and abort the mission, pickle their munitions, return home saying, we just couldn't make it. I think the airplane was hiccuping. Got to land, get it checked out. And it was very disruptive because targets that should have been struck on time to be part of the campaign progression weren't getting struck. And now we have to take assets in and restrike these targets, et cetera. We're not going to give these Arabs anything to attack because they're not any good. They don't know what they're doing. They can't do it, and they will screw things up. So, if Iran was to say, yeah, you could bomb Fish Island here, we'll give you this target, you drop 3 bombs off the water, take photographs of the splash and claim you're good, that would be face-saving mechanism. We wouldn't care because it's irrelevant. But we're not going to integrate these people in a meaningful fashion into a campaign as complex as this. First of all, to do that, we would have to expose extraordinarily sensitive secrets. There's a lot going on that people don't know about, a lot going on. They would have to be exposed to electronic warfare capabilities of the United States that have been front loaded based upon intelligence information that we've collected through a variety of means, the classification of which is often code word. And you think we're going to give The Saudis access to code word information. You're higher than a kite. We're not going to give anybody access to that. And so, no, these people won't be integrated into this campaign. They'll be sitting there, flying circles in the sky over their capitals, fearful of the next step. Iran has paused, but Iran has paused by saying, stop supporting the American attacks. Stop it. Kick the Americans out of your country. I believe that's the Iranian demand. Kick the Americans out of your country. If you fail to do so, then you are part of the problem, not part of the solution, and we will continue to attack you. And so that, I think, you're going to see as the next phase. While they're doing this pause on the Arabs, and let me just say one more thing about the Arabs. It's funny. The Arabs are very mad. No, Nima, the Arabs are very afraid. They're very afraid right now because they are seeing vulnerabilities. They are seeing these despicable, despotic despots who govern these Gulf Arab states being exposed as the fat perverts that they are. These rich perfume princesses that just run around and steal money and live the high life while the rest of their people live the low life, who fly to London to whore and take drugs and drink booze and then return pretending they're pious Muslims. They're being exposed for what they are, rats, human rats. And the murder of Ali Khamenei, the martyrdom of Ali Khamenei, has empowered the Shia of these respective Gulf sheikdoms in a way that never has before. This is an existential fight. And what they're afraid of, I'll tell you what the Khalifa of Bahrain are afraid of, is that the majority Shia population there marches on the royal palace and kills them all, which may be their fate. They may end up running to Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia has you worried because there is a lot of Shia in the eastern provinces that can rise up and take over the oil fields, where the bulk of the oil fields are. Kuwait has to be worried. The United Arab Emirates have to be worried. That's what's happening here. These guys are scared to death because Iran has initiated something that they can't control. See, they like the Abrams Accords because the Abrams Accords creates the fiction of, the Gulf Arab states, being for the benefit of the people. But what it means is that they've literally knelt before Israel and kissed the ring of Israel and accepted the notion of greater Israel, but they're going to bribe their people through the perception of economic prosperity. But what Iran has done now is exposed the inconsistencies and the lies and the hypocrisy of these tyrants. And it could, in fact, mean the end of one, if not more, maybe all of these pedophile despots. And that's what they are. I mean, these are not good people. These are not moral people. These are people who live the most despicable lifestyle imaginable. One that is, fueled by greed, lust, avarice, and oil money. These guys are just awash in oil money. We used to go around. We had something called Operation 10 Cup when we were as a weapons inspection, and everybody wanted to get on Operation 10 Cup. Richard Butler, come on, Richard, sue me. I love the discovery. Richard Butler, as the executive chairman, loved Operation 10 Cup because part of it was going around the Gulf and asking for donations, because the United Nations Special Commission was funded not by the direct UN budget, but by donations by member states who said we specifically fund the operations of the weapons inspectors. And one place that they would always go is Kuwait. And it was very hard. I thought I wanted to go on that, but I had second thoughts, and because it wasn't what I do. I mean, I'm a weapons inspector. I'm not a diplomat running around begging for money. But I know, I'm not going to name their names, but they know who they are. And they were falling all over themselves to go with Richard Butler on Operation 10 Cup, because you would go on the Emir's yacht, and the Emir's yacht was full of pious people when you were at the pier. And then when the yacht crossed over the territorial boundaries, the booze came out and they were just having a party, and the Emir brought out the gold Rolexes. And he gave gold Rolexes to every member of the UMSCOM party. And Richard Butler went on at least 3 of these Operation 10 Cups, and he got a gold Rolex every single time, and he never declared it. Australian government, I don't know what the statute of limitations is on undeclared assets, but you might want to look at Richard Butler's gold watches and the gold watches of the others. I mean, it's just bribery, but it shows how despicable these people are and how wealthy they are and how ridiculous they are. And these gold watches weren't used. They didn't, it wasn't the emir saying, I'm sorry, I'm short on American dollars. Here's a gold watch, take it to New York City and sell it for $40,000 and apply that money to send Scott Ritter into harm's way in Iraq so he can find the hidden weapons of mass destruction. That I would support. It was, hey, Richard Butler, we're playing the game, aren't we? We're living the life, aren't we? Here's a $40,000 wristwatch because what the hell? We're here just living the big life. We're fooling the Americans. We're doing everything right. We're getting away with slant drilling and robbing the Iraqis blind. So here's $40,000 bribe to keep your frickin' mouth shut about what's really going on. And other inspectors or other members of the UNCON staff took those watches as well. This is who we're done. This is the reality of don't get me going about the Khalifa family in Bahrain and their sexual perversions. What they do with the Gulf Air stewardesses that they recruit. They use them as their own private pool of their own harem, prostitutes. They set them up in apartment buildings so that they can, sexually please them, every month. This is who they are. Leave Bahrain, drive the causeway over into Saudi Arabia and start counting the mosques you see at the end of the causeway that are built by pious Saudis who are leaving Bahrain, understanding the sins that they have committed. This is who we are dealing with here, and this is who the Iranians are dealing with. I'm not saying the Iranians are perfect. There's plenty of information that Iranian ayatollahs and imams are as human and fallible as the next people. There's evidence of corruption. There's evidence of prostitution. There's evidence of any wrongdoing because they're human beings. But the Islamic Republic of Iran is not systemically flawed like the Saudi kingdom, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Iranians are pious people. Look at Ahmadinejad, who apparently was killed, by the way, the former president. He was living the most humble life possible. This is a man who could have empowered himself with riches, and he was living the life of a simple pensioner, minding his own business. He was murdered by the Israelis and by the Americans because they're angry at the role he played in getting the Iranian nuclear program up to where it was. He's the guy that was the president when all of the breakthroughs took place. So they murdered him because they're angry at him for doing that which he was legally allowed to do. They murdered him. But this wasn't a man who was sitting in retirement surrounded by pretty women and drinking booze on the side. This is a pious man who was living the life of a pious pensioner, a simple life. And we murdered him. We murdered him. We murdered him. The Iranians are literally a step above the Gulf Arab nations. I'm not picking on the Arab people themselves. I would never do that. But what I am saying is that the Arab people have allowed themselves to be governed by these despicable monarchies for far too long. These monarchies that have nothing to do with democracy, nothing to do with serving the people, but exploiting the natural resources of their countries for their own personal benefits. Go to London.
You're talking about the leadership of these Arab states because we know the people, they're different, and we have to draw that line between the leadership and the people who are living in these countries. Scott, you've mentioned that the first 6 bombs were shot by Israelis, and what is your understanding of the attack on this girls' school, and they murdered these little girls in the school? More than 100, and if I'm not mistaken, 12 of these kids were killed in that school. What was that? How could that happen in such an operation?
Again, purely speculation, based upon my understanding of how targeting in support of a strategic air campaign works. When we launched Operation Desert Storm against Iraq in January of 1991, each target that we struck, we had a plan. And the plan had been programmed out for a long time. Aircraft were going to take off with specific munitions on on board to fly a strike profile to drop a bomb on a target that was identified. And there was a reason to hit the target. We had a package of intelligence that said, this is what the target is, this is what the target does. And then we were dropping the bomb to achieve results on the ground that would impact the ability of the target to do what it was to do. And, you know, we designed the impact points. My job was to review the targets after they were bombed to see if we actually had those impact points. Did we get the observable indication of success? But, you know, I was familiar with everything that we were, you know, I read all the target packages. These were viable targets. These were all legitimate targets under the law of war, and they were well defined. As the war went on and we started blowing up these targets, a couple things happened. One, we move on to follow-on targets. But two, you get derivative targets, meaning if you blew up a building, but the Iraqis had evacuated the building, now you have to look for evacuation sites. So you start collecting intelligence about where these evacuation sites are, et cetera. If you're going after leadership targets and they aren't in the primary building you blew up, you're starting to look for them. I was involved in one, you know, retargeting effort involving Saddam Hussein. I was summoned to a meeting with Prince Turki, the head of Saudi intelligence. General Waller, the deputy commander, was there, and I was briefed on by Turki of sensitive intelligence that the Saudis had about the movement of Saddam Hussein from Baghdad into Basra for some high-level meetings. And I was given a description of the building that he was supposed to be in on a given time frame. And my job was to find that building, create a target package, and put bombs on that building and kill Saddam. And, you know, I spent some time doing it. We're under time frame. I'm rushed. And so I'm sitting here working with a very capable photo interpreter. And we come up with 3 targets that meet the criteria. And I wrote them up and I submitted them. And we dropped bombs on all 3 targets. Now, right off the bat, you know, the 2 of the targets aren't the target. Let's say that I got it right, and one of them was the target. 2 of them aren't. And what we're looking for are residences. So I blew up 2 homes automatically that were full of innocent people, had nothing to do with Saddam. The third one, if it was Saddam, we're going to kill innocent people anyways. But this was considered to be collateral damage, acceptable damage. It turns out that Saddam didn't make the trip, and we blew up 3 homes, and we killed at least 3 families. That's how this happens. That's how this happens. But this normally happens later in the air campaign when chaos has taken over the war. And now we're looking for, you know, targets that aren't well defined. We're looking for concepts, and we're trying to meet concepts, put it into physical place on the ground, and achieve destruction. The reason why it doesn't happen up front is because you normally have a very well-developed target plan and such. For Israel to strike these targets, or CENTCOM, I think it was actually the Americans who struck it, because the schools in southern Iran, in Minab, I believe. So it was the United States that struck it. What it means is that we were given a problem set, suppression of Iranian missile launch capabilities, because if it's in Minab, that's what it's related to. And we're looking for not just launch locations, but command and control locations, et cetera. And some targeteers, photo analysts, looked at this building and made a determination that this building was a command and control facility. Maybe they saw something, maybe there's something cold. I don't know. I don't know the intelligence, but somebody determined that this building is a target worthy of putting missiles into. And it was a deliberate action. And it tells you that our intelligence is horrible, horrible. Because for us to believe that a active secondary school for girls aged 6 to 12 is a command and control target, it means we got it completely wrong, which now we roll into the bombs that are dropping. If we got it that wrong, that means we got everything wrong. That means we're blowing up nothing. We're blowing up targets that the Iranians fed to us. I mean, again, I just have to go off of past experience. Amr Rashid al-Udeidi was the minister of oil, but he's also the guy who used to be the director of the Iraqi Military and Industrial Commission. And we were having a talk, I think, in the 1993 timeframe, and he was getting frustrated with me because I kept coming in and carrying out these inspections that kept exposing the Iraqis as liars on the periphery. But he said, look, so you blow us up in the war, you blow everything up, you blow up our files, you blow up everything, and we're trying to reconstitute things. And we tell you a story that's based upon incomplete data that we have. And you, being the brilliant Scott Ritter that you are, tear our story apart and you find inconsistencies and you carry out inspections that show that we were wrong. And then you come here and you call me a liar to my face. I said, well, you told me a story that turned out not to be true. And I can prove that it's not true now. And he said, oh, the great Scott Ritter, you're so awesome. Do you know that how easily I can control you? He said, I know, for instance, that you are reliant upon a certain stream of information that comes from Kurds. He said, so what if I set up a special cell? And we said, how can we get Scott Ritter, how can we take control of his inspections? And this special cell creates intelligence, and we do a good job. We get the photographs, we get everything, and we let it be discovered by the Kurdish stream, and that data makes it to you. And then you start inspecting these sites. We now own you because now we know the cause and effect relationship, and we own you, and we're going to control your inspections. And later on, they did exactly that to certain inspections. They took control of the inspection process by controlling the flow of data. The reason why I bring this up is that the Iranians are full of very clever people. And they've been preparing for this war for a long time. They've been watching the United States fight wars in Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. They understand how we collect intelligence. They understand how we collect intelligence. And they have been feeding us false streams of intelligence for some time now that has prompted us to build target decks where we are expending precious resources to blow up things that simply don't exist. The Iraqis did this during the counter Scud campaign in Western Iraq. The Iraqis knew when we started getting resources over that they were going to have trouble getting a window of launch opportunity, or else they had to get hit. So what they would do is they created a decoy unit that would set up fixed decoy sites that would get our attention, and we'd send bombers there. And then they'd do a mobile decoy site, meaning they'd have targets moving that would be detected, that reported on, and the rest of the resources came here. And while we were out there bombing fixed decoys and going after mobile decoys, the two real launchers snuck out of Al-Qaim, fired their missiles against Israel, and escaped away and got away with it. This is what Iran is doing. Iran is running a campaign of this sophistication, etc. You take a look at a lot of the imagery that Israel has published about blowing up Iranian launchers. These are decoy launchers put out there by the Iranians to absorb that. They put out information about fixed locations, and the Israelis are bombing these fixed locations. The Americans are bombing these fixed locations, but there's nothing in those buildings. They've been evacuated long ago. We may on occasion get it right and blow something up, but that's okay because the Iranians have a system that is, has enough depth to absorb losses and keep functioning. And we see it keep functioning today. The Iranians have been preparing for this campaign for a long, long, long time. The bombing of this school is indicative of the fact that we don't have a clear intelligence picture. Now, people say, well, Scott, we were good enough to get Ali Khamenei on the first day. We weren't that good, guys. He was sitting at home, sitting at home, sitting at home. He wanted to be killed. We fell into his trap. Ali Khamenei, a man who probably had cancer, a man who has openly said that his body is failing him, died a martyr's death. And in doing so, he saved the Islamic Republic of Iran because the people now have rallied around that cause like they've never done before. That's proof positive the way that the Iranians have exploited our system of war. We thought we were carrying out a decapitation strike with the first 6 missiles, but we guaranteed we lost the war. And the Iranians guaranteed we lost the war too, because all we did is turn Ali Khamenei into a martyr.
Yeah. As we talk, Scott, we've learned that Iran has hit 3 tankers, British and the U.S. tankers in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, because they're aware in that they have, nobody can pass this strait, and because there's some sort of blockade happening there. And how do you see, and I'm sure that you've seen the picture, the footage is coming out of Israel. Tel Aviv is just getting into, some really serious missiles are hitting Tel Aviv. Iran, Tehran they're hitting Tehran as well. How do you see, as it seems to me that Iran has started with a strategy they had at the end of the 12-day war, not going that with, intensifying the battlefield, going little by little and gradually increasing the number of missiles that they can fire at Israel?
Well, a couple things. First of all, let's look at Tehran. What is Israel blowing up today? They're blowing up known locations. They're blowing up the police academy, the police barracks. They're blowing up the Revolutionary Guard Command headquarters building. Do you think that the police woke up this morning and said, let's all go to work at the police station today and sit there and let the Israelis kill us? Nope. They're dispersed. Do you think anybody was in the Revolutionary Guard Command building? Nope. So Israel is blowing up empty targets. What did Iran hit yesterday? I'll mispronounce the name, but Beit Shabin.
Beit. It's called. Let me find it. It's Beit Shemeim. It's something like that.
Yeah, again.
I'll check it out here.
I mispronounced my own name, so I will definitely fumble everything else out there. This is what you get when you get a Marine talking to you about complex things. The brain doesn't necessarily translate it into words that are discernible. But the point is, that building that was struck is supposedly where senior Israeli leaders, combat leaders, were meeting to have a conference about this conflict.
Beit Shemesh. Beit Shemesh. Beit Shemesh.
So I wasn't too. I said Beit Shabin, Beit Shemesh, Beit Shemesh, tomato, potato. We know what we're talking about. The point is, the site was struck by the Iranians, and there are casualties. So the people they wanted to hit are in there. If I know the Israelis the way I know the Israelis, that decision to go to that building was made at the last second for operational security reasons. And there were at least like 3 targets or 3 places they could have gone to. And that morning, they made the decision to go to this place. And then they were struck. The Iranians did this on purpose because now the Israelis are saying, somebody knew about this. Somebody knew that we went there, the meeting we're going to have, the time frame, and they hit us with a missile that we couldn't shoot down. This scares the living dog poop out of the Israelis. The Iranians are hitting targets in Israel, all of which show that level of knowledge and power. Get back to the school. We don't know what we're bombing. We don't know what we're bombing. The Israelis now know that the Iranians know exactly what they're bombing, and they're hitting it. It's very frightening. And this is what was happening at the end of the...
This is the picture, Scott. This is the picture of that building that you just mentioned. You see, they hit just this target, and you see the devastation that has happened.
Yeah, they got them. War is tragic, but, the Israelis started this, sow the wind, reap the whirlwind. They should read their own Bible. The Iranians at the end of the 12-day war were achieving this very same result. If you remember, the volume of missiles had dropped, but the missiles that Iran was firing, they were all hitting their target. They had exhausted the air defense systems, and they were firing missiles that were designed to defeat the air defense systems. And the targets they were hitting were targets that, to the average layperson, going, that's just sort of that's a random building you hit in Beersheba. Why would you hit that? But the Israelis went, holy cow, they hit the one place that was important, where we were doing things that, when they hit the hospital, remember when they hit the hospital, and everybody's trying to say, oh, you hit a hospital. Well, actually, it hit a command and control center that the Israelis put in the hospital. on purpose to try and disguise it, which is a war crime. But once you put the command and control center there, the hospital is no longer protected, and the Iranians hit it saying, we know what you're doing. And the Israelis went, they know what we're doing. And the other thing that the Israelis realized is we can't win. If this goes on, they're inside our decision-making cycle. We're going to lose. Hence, Bibi Netanyahu's hand shaking when he talks about bringing the war to an end, calling up President Trump, begging for a ceasefire because Israel had lost the war. Well, what Iran is doing is picking up right where they left. They're showing that they have the intelligence streams that tell them in near real time what the Israelis are doing. They're showing them that they have the missiles that can hit Israel precisely in a timely fashion, and they're just proving to Israel that they have lost this war. And Israel has lost this war. This is the evidence. And they're doing the same with the United States. They're hitting targets. As I said, there's nothing random about these targets. People are like, why did they hit a hotel in Dubai? Why would you hit a civilian target? It turns out it was a CIA station. That's why they hit it. Why would you hit in Oman? Hit a port facility? Because the two warehouses they hit were used by the United States government in a secret deal that was cut with the Omani government. They just happened to blow up the two warehouses that the United States had contracted for, which means they have insight into what the United States is doing. The mistakes are made, and war is war. Drones can be hit as they come in, fly off target, and strike a target they're not meant to hit. Intelligence can be bad, although the Iranians have yet to be exposed to have the kind of intelligence failure that the United States had in striking a girls' school. It's so far, it appears the Iranians are hitting targets that are legitimate targets, and they're having great impact. And it's scaring the hell out of these Gulf Arab states. One of my greatest moments in recent history was a discussion I had yesterday with Mario Nafal. I don't know if you saw it. He's a very pro-Israeli commentator, openly hates Iran, and he tends to put out just a bunch of crap. And so I'm trying to set the record straight with him on a number of things. But, he was sort of in his confident, cocky self about, whether the Iranians would be hitting Gulf Arabs. I said, no, you guys are all targets. You're all guilty. You're all sinners. And Iran, and he's like, no, they would never do. And while we're talking, you see him come to the realization that he lives in Dubai, and Dubai is being struck. And you see the look on his face as he realized, I'm a target. Yeah, you are. So is anybody who is complicit with Israel in the United States on this illegal war of aggression. And we never need to lose face of that. This is an illegal war of aggression. An illegal war of aggression, the highest war crime imaginable, one that got Nazi Germans hung by the neck until dead at the end of World War II. And it's not just that, but it's we have enhancement factors that factor in, such as the war crime of perfidy, where the United States created a white flag of truce and got the Iranians to operate under this truce while we attacked them. The surprise attack, the cowardly surprise attack carried out by Israel and the United States while Donald Trump pretended to engage in diplomacy. Diplomacy, by the way, you hear Donald Trump tell the lies. The man is just a straight up liar. And he's talking about the negotiations and what Iran is doing. He's a liar. Everything he said was a lie. The Iranians had actually provided a deal to the Omanis that was acceptable to Witkoff and Kushner, except Witkoff and Kushner aren't there to accept. They're there to draw the process out as part of an act of perfidy. But the Iranians had basically agreed to something that would make it permanently impossible for them to get a nuclear weapon, that their nuclear program would be very much limited and even within the scope and scale of those limitations, only able to do that which is supportable of the peaceful nuclear energy program with inspections, no sunset clauses, no expansion, no this, no nothing. Very limited program, the elimination of all enriched uranium stockpiles under verification of UN IAEA inspectors with American inspector enhancements, AMAT. And the Iranians had agreed to all of that. And yet, as the Omani diplomats were flying to the United States to finalize this deal, we bombed Iran. Perfidy. One last thing about the nuclear program, just to show the stupidity of the United States. We claim that Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapons program, but we know and it has been acknowledged by many that Ali Khamenei, as the supreme jurisprudent, had issued at least 2 fatwas that prohibited Iran from pursuing nuclear weapons, saying that they are incompatible with Islam. And these fatwas conformed with a similar fatwa issued by Khomeini at the end of the Iran-Iraq war. If you remember discussions we had here where we were talking about the status of the Iranian program in the fall of 2024, fall and spring of 2024 and spring of 2025, I said that the Iranians were creating capability that made them a threshold state, 60% enriched uranium. And I talked about the sentiment of many senior Iranians, including those who were influential to the supreme leader, who said that Iran should do away with the fatwa that there are religious cutouts that will allow them to pursue nuclear weapons because of emergent existential conditions. And yet, at the end of the day, according to a conversation I had with the Iranian president this past September, to a question I asked him, he said that Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon, that we have made a decision that a nuclear weapon will not strengthen us, it will weaken us, that our deterrence is our ballistic missile system. And he said, but also it's incompatible with Islam, and we are an Islamic republic, and our supreme leader has said so. Well, the supreme leader is now dead. Theory of an existential crisis has become reality. Iran is literally fighting for its life, the Islamic Republic. And the 3-person committee that has been formed by the Iranian president includes as its senior jurist, to a man who very well may become the next supreme leader, somebody who has articulated that Iran should do away with the fatwa that prohibits nuclear weapons, and that Iran should be permitted to build nuclear weapons, that nuclear weapons under the conditions that exist are permissible under Islamic jurisprudence. So we killed the one guy that said no to nuclear weapons, and we've now empowered Iran, empowered a man who believes that Iran has a right to pursue nuclear weapons. And I can guarantee you this, we don't know where Iran's 60% uranium stockpiles are. We don't know where Iran set up additional cascades of IR-6, IR-8 advanced centrifuges. We don't know if Iran has converted that 60% enriched uranium stockpile they had into 92, 94, 96% enriched uranium, which can serve as the fissile core of a nuclear bomb, 5 to 10 nuclear bombs, depending on how much 60% enriched uranium was out there. We were told that Iran had the ability to rapidly create a nuclear weapon, that they had solved all of the warhead problems. And so Iran has warheads that have been built that can be loaded up with uranium if that decision was made and delivered against an Israeli target. So Donald Trump is one of the dumbest men on the planet, one of the truly stupidest men on the planet, advised by some of the dumbest people in the world. He doesn't understand arms control. He doesn't understand non-proliferation. He doesn't understand the foundational concepts and precepts that are attached to it. If he did, he would realize that the best way to keep a nuclear weapon out of Iran's hands is to continue to have Iran adhere to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and make the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty workable for Iran. And we had a deal in place that would have done that. This would have been the better deal, because the JCPOA was always fundamentally flawed, not because of what Iran did or Iran negotiated, but because of the duplicity of the United States. People never reflect on the fact that Barack Obama, the man who signed, or at least signed off on the JCPOA in July of 2015, in April 2015, gave an interview to NPR where somebody asked a question about the sunset clauses, because Barack Obama was saying, well, we have created something that provides a 1-year breakout window, meaning that if Iran decided to break out, we'd have 1 year to respond. But that time frame collapses as the sunset clauses mature and Iran could deploy advanced centrifuges, increase the amount of uranium stockpiles, et cetera. Suddenly that 1 year window evaporates. And people said, well, what about that? What happens when we reach those windows? And Barack Obama said, well, we will, of course, revisit this issue. And if Iran hasn't changed the way it behaves, meaning voluntarily walked away from its nuclear program, then we will relook at the JCPOA. I mean, it wasn't a real deal. It was always duplicity. always duplicity. It was a fundamentally flawed deal. So now Donald Trump could walk in and say, I have come away with a deal that actually solves the Iranian nuclear problem once and for all. Except it was never about Iran's nuclear program. It was always about regime change, always about Israel dictating strategic priorities to the United States. And that's the
कैसे हैं दोस्तों, मैं फैसल मुराइच। ईरान पर हमले का आज दूसरा दिन और इस्राएली सोर्सेज कह रही थी
আপনি কি আপনার সন্তানকে নিজ হাতে বিষ কিনে খাওয়াচ্ছেন? না, তাহলে কম দামে কেনা খাবার নিয়ে
थी कि आयतुल्लाह की बॉडी उन्होंने देख ली है, लिहाजा दे वर कंफर्मिंग कि आयतुल्लाह इज नो मोर। और उनके साथ अली शाम खानी जो बहुत से हमलों के सर्वाइवर थे, वज़ीर दिफा उनके और पासदाराने इनकलाब के चीफ, ये तमाम लोग उनके साथ मारे गए थे। इन सब ने रात कंफर्म कर दिया था, ईरान ने आज कंफर्म किया है। उसके बाद की सूरत हाल क्या है? अब जाहिर है आप सब जानते हैं कि सबसे स्ट्रॉन्ग कैंडिडेट जो हैं वहाँ पर वो अली लारीजानी है, क्योंकि वो सिक्योरिटी के भी हेड थे, चीफ सिक्योरिटी एडवाइज़र थे और सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल के हेड थे, और इनका IRGC के ऊपर इन्फ्लुएंस भी बहुत है। क्योंकि जब सुप्रीम लीडर इस तरह से मारे गए हैं, तो अब जो सबसे बड़ी पावर है वो IRGC ही है। अब उसने भी ये बात तय करनी है कि वो जिसके साथ सबसे ज़्यादा लॉयल होगी उसके नए आयतुल्लाह बनने के, नए कमांडर